Devon Nereida Guzman was born in June 1981 in the city of Phillipsburg, in the state of New Jersey, in the United States. She was the eldest daughter of Ricardo and Melody Guzman and was 19 years old at the time of the events. Devon enjoyed going out with her friends and was described as a lively girl. At a certain point in her life, she came out as bi and received full support from her parents. At the time of the crime, Devon lived in a hotel room with Kiri Renner, his girlfriend, in the city of Forks Township, a small town in the state of Pennsylvania. Devon worked as a cleaner and had recently bought a new car, which made her feel very fulfilled. However, Kiri wasn't the only girl Devon was involved with. She also had a relationship with a young woman named Michelle Hetzel, who was already married to a man named Brandon Bloss. According to reports from Ricardo, the girl's father, Devon, and Kiri had a troubled relationship. In fact, Devon even said he was more in love with Michelle, his lover. In the early morning hours of June 15, 2000, Kiri, Devon's girlfriend, and Michelle, his lover, went out together to look for her, as she was missing. According to Kiri, she and Devon had a very bad argument hours before. Devon then stormed out of the house and hasn't been back since. After several hours of searching, the two women found Devon's car in a deserted park near the National Canal Museum, located near the city of Easton in the state of Pennsylvania. Devon was lying in the back seat of the vehicle and was apparently just unconscious. After finding her, the women decided to call the police. When the police arrived at the scene, the first thing they did was check if Devon was alive, which was not the case. The young woman had a large laceration in her throat, which was enough to cause her death, as everything indicated that it was a crime. The authorities began investigations. Soon, the police realized that the crime scene was set up to believe that Devon had taken his own life. This is because, in her hands, there was a knife. There was no blood on that knife. It was not even the knife used in the crime. For the police, someone took Devon's life elsewhere and placed it there. Furthermore, there was a syringe at the hem of her pants, indicating that perhaps she had used some injectable drug. However, a toxicology report showed that there were no illicit substance in Devon's system. This indicated that whoever had staged this entire scene was also responsible for the searing. The autopsy carried out on Devon's body found that the cut in his throat was so deep that it almost went down to his spine. She also had marks of aggression on her body and small defensive cuts on her hands. According to the autopsy, despite the deep cut in his throat, the cause of his death was due to suffocation. In other words, she was already lifeless when her throat was cut. When officers found her in her car, her jacket was placed over most of her body. It was as if the criminal didn't want to see her that way, and this made the detectives theorize that the person responsible for the crime was someone who knew her and had some kind of feelings for her. Another thing that was noticed by detectives was that Devon's clothes had mud stains and some grass on them. During the investigation, the police named Kiri Renner, Devon's girlfriend, as the main suspect in the crime. Kiri was questioned for about 4 hours. During this interrogation, she told the police that she and Devon had a loud argument that night, and that, during the argument, a customer from the bar below where they live came upstairs to check what was going on. Sometime later, according to Kiri, Devon left the house. Police obtained a search warrant for the location where the two lived, and during that search, officers found a small amount of blood in the bathroom, which Kiri said was due to Devon cutting herself weeks earlier. A car mat was also found in the same bathroom, Kiri's explanation being that they went camping and spilled food on it, and that was why it was in the bathroom, to be cleaned there. The carpet was taken for analysis, and experts found signs of food, confirming this claim. Police did a luminol test in the shower, and the product glowed, indicating that there were signs of blood there, but the amount was small and not consistent with the wound on Devon's neck. For experts, that amount was more consistent with blood from a menstrual flow. Still, during her interrogation, Kiri admitted that she and Devon used to fight frequently, and that sometimes they resorted to physical aggression. When interviewed by the police, customers in the bar below where the young women lived said they heard fights that sounded very bad that night. Ricardo, Devon's father, told police that Kiri was very controlling of his daughter. He also said that they used to hit each other and even threw bottles during the fight. but they never seriously hurt each other. After further investigation, the police found that the blood found in the bathroom was indeed Devon's. Kiri was taken for a lie detector test, and although the results were inconclusive, she was not completely ruled out as a suspect. Asked what was the reason for the fight he had with his girlfriend before she disappeared, Kiri told police it was over Michelle, Devon's lover. Michelle was the second suspect the police began investigating. She was married to a man named Brandon Bloss, as I said previously. Michelle and Brandon met at an orphanage, and she was already romantically involved with Devon, even before she married Brandon. Brandon knew about his wife's relationship with Devon, but despite apparently conniving at it, the truth was that he hated that whole situation. A few weeks before the crime, Devon and Michelle took a trip to the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean. They bought wedding rings and promised each other that they would leave their partners to be together, which didn't happen. Police discovered that this trip was taken with Michelle using her husband's credit card. She spent around $7,000, and this ended up causing a fight between the couple. On June 15, 2000, the day of the crime, Brandon and Michelle contacted Devon by calling her several times to her home. Brandon told her that Michelle was sick and that he needed to see her. At the time, Kiri went with Devon, but Brandon asked that only Devon go in. A neighbor of Brandon and Michelle told police he saw Devon at their house around 12:35. The time was very close to the time the coroner placed as the time of the crime, which would be between midnight and 3 a.m. Other witnesses and friends told police that Michelle, Brandon, Devon, and Kiri were always at odds when tracing Devon's last steps before the crime. Another witness also told police that he saw the young woman at Michelle and Brandon's house around midnight. That same witness said Michelle, Brandon, and Devon were all yelling at each other in front of the residence, but shortly afterward, Devon was taken inside. After collecting all this information, the police obtained a search warrant for Brandon and Michelle's home. Therefore, a search was carried out inside the couple's property, but nothing compromising was found by the detectives. Detectives then recalled that when they examined Devon's body, she had grass and mud stains, indicating that she had been dragged across some dirt floor. That's when they decided to search Michelle and Brandon's backyard. Officers found a pair of Michelle's jeans with signs of blood in the washing machine that was full of water. There was also a syringe cap consistent with the syringe found with Devon's body. The blood found on Michelle's pants was sent for analysis, but due to it being very diluted by the water, it was not possible to obtain DNA from it. Police also did a luminol test in the home's backyard and discovered bloodstains on the pool cover and the nozzle of a gardening hose. Following these discoveries, authorities placed Michelle and Brandon's home under 24-hour surveillance. At one point, while a police officer was watching the house, Brandon went out to take out the trash. The police officer then took the chance to collect this trash and examine it, since as it had been discarded, it was now public property. In the trash, officers found a used telephone pad, which is often used to cover open wounds. The wound mark on the pillow was in the shape of a human mouth. The pad was examined by police using alternative light sources. The image was consistent with a bite mark, as had been predicted, and this gave detectives legal authority to examine Brandon. During that examination, authorities found a bite mark on Brandon's left forearm. The mark was compared to the teeth of Kiri, Michelle, and Devon, and in Devon's case her body had to be exhumed for this test to be carried out, as at that point, her body had already been buried. A forensic odontologist was responsible for taking the mold of Devon's teeth, and after comparing it with the bite mark on Brandon's forearm, the compatibility result was positive. Despite this was only proof that Devon had bitten Brandon, not that he had committed the crime. Subsequently, the police decided to inspect Michelle's car, which had already been in the possession of the authorities since the day Devon's body was found. The police had Michelle's car because on the day she went out to look for Devon together with Kiri, she stopped the car very close to Devon's car when she found her in a deserted park near the National Canal Museum, located near the city of Easton. Because of this, the car sort of became part of the crime scene. During the search of Michelle's car, the police found Brandon's bloody clothes and some gloves covered in blood, all in the trunk. These clothes were taken for analysis, and DNA extracted from the blood confirmed that it belonged to Devon. Additionally, blood stains and hair samples found on Devon's shirt matched hair and blood samples from Brandon. At Michelle's mother's house, police found the wedding rings that Michelle and Devon had bought on their trip to the Caribbean. They also found a key to the doctor's office where Michelle had worked, where she had easy access to syringes. When questioned by the police, both Kiri, Michelle, and Brandon denied having committed the crime. Michelle and Brandon admitted that Devon came to visit them, but said she left their house around 1 a.m. From the evidence, detectives began to formulate a timeline for the crime. According to them, shortly after Michelle married Brandon, she and Devon took a trip to the Caribbean where they exchanged wedding vows. At this time, Devon and Kiri were separated, but when Devon returned from his Caribbean trip with Michelle, she decided to rekindle her relationship with Kiri. This left Michelle furious, and she, with the help of Brandon, began to devise a plan to put an end to Devon. This trip that Devon and Michelle took together to the Caribbean was not their first trip. According to the police, the two had already traveled together to Puerto Rico. On the night of the crime, Michelle and Devon went to Ricardo's house, Devon's father. According to the man, his daughter and Michelle had mentioned that they were going to get married during the holidays and even exchanged rings. However, at some point, the two argued about the fact that Devon still lived and thus had a relationship with Kiri, and ended up leaving Ricardo's house in separate cars. After leaving her father's house, Devon went to the house where she lived with Kiri. There they began to argue about Michelle, and this argument ended in physical aggression. A few minutes later, Devon spoke to Brandon on the phone and decided to go to his and Michelle's house, as according to Brandon, Michelle was sick. It was at that moment that Devon disappeared and was later found dead. On August 13, 2000, Michelle Hetzel and Brandon Bloss were arrested for the crime against Devon Guzman. The prosecution believed that the motive for the crime was jealousy. According to prosecutors, Michelle was jealous that Devon was still involved with Kiri, while Brandon was jealous of Michelle and Devon's relationship. After the couple's arrest, prosecutors said there was no evidence that Kiri had anything to do with the crime. They concluded that all the blood found in the bathroom of the house where Devon and Kiri lived was not from the night of the crime. According to detectives, Devon was lured to Michelle and Brandon's home, where she was taken to the backyard and attacked. Prosecutors said there was no doubt the crime was premeditated. In October 2001, the trial of Michelle Hetzel and Brandon Bloss began. Due to the story of love and betrayal involving 3 women and a man, the case had great repercussions in the United States, and many people's eyes were focused on the couple accused of the crime. The 2 defendants had 2 lawyers each. Michelle's lawyers were appointed by the court, and at the beginning of the trial, they argued that it was better to change the location of the trial to another county, due to its repercussions in that area. However, this request was denied by the responsible judge. The trial was expected to last 2 to 3 weeks. At the time, Michelle Hetzel was 19 years old, and her husband, Brandon Bloss, was 26. Melody Guzman, Devon's mother, said she waited for the couple's trial with great fear and anxiety. She couldn't wait to see them pay for their crime. Defense attorneys for Michelle and Brandon focused on gaps in the investigation. They pointed out, for example, that the blood of an unidentified third person was detected in Michelle's house and in Devon's car, which could indicate the presence of another criminal. Lawyers also argued that the couple had a pending divorce request, which would prove that they had not acted together to plan or commit a crime. Michelle and Brandon's lawyers had different theories about what happened. Michelle's lawyer claimed that Brandon committed the crime because he was frustrated with her relationship with his wife and the amount of money that Michelle spent on the victim. Brandon's lawyer stated that it was Michelle who committed the crime, after the young woman rejected her to be with Kiri. However, despite this push and shove, the prosecution claimed that both were equally responsible for the crime and planned it together. It was never revealed who actually took Devon's life, as Michelle and Brandon kept accusing each other in their statements. During the trial, it was revealed that Michelle had tried to hire a man to take Devon's life before. According to police, she offered intimate favors and money for this man to go out with Devon and commit the crime, but the offer was denied. In the end, the jury found both Michelle and Brandon guilty of the crime, and both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That Crime became an episode of Investigation Discovery's Grave Secrets, a crime show about the consequences of living secret lives. In addition to documentaries about the crime, the book Lipstick and Blood by John Kearney is also based on the case. Currently, arrest records indicate that Michelle is incarcerated at the State Correctional Institution in Muncie, Pennsylvania. Brandon, in turn, is serving his sentence at the State Correctional Institution Somerset, also in Pennsylvania. And this was the story of the case of Devon Guzman, a girl involved in a love triangle who ended up being a victim of her own lover out of jealousy. Well guys, that's it. Thanks for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I'll see you in the next video.